Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Jamie Gass, Director of Pioneer Education. Welcome to our webinar, Voc-Tech Schools and Urban Education Reform. After 30 years, the Commonwealth's state-led K-12 education reform work has been a historic success. The group of pre-existing schools that have made the most academic progress during that time are the Bay State's nation-leading vocational technical schools. The Voc-Techs have done this while simultaneously preparing their students for careers as carpenters, plumbers, auto repair workers, medical technicians in agriculture, and even the life sciences. That is, by using the tools of education reform, Massachusetts Voc-Tech students are now score on par with or higher academically than their peers in comprehensive high schools. These schools produce students who are prepared for careers in the trades and industry while achieving high graduation rates, microscopic dropout rates, and having more than 6,000 students on wait lists. In Pioneer's 2022 book, Hands-On Achievement, Massachusetts National Model Vocational Technical Schools, we devoted chapters to the successful reforms found in urban Voc-Techs, including those in Worcester, Springfield, Boston, and New Bedford. For example, Worcester Tech gained national notoriety for its successes. To honor its turnaround, President Obama, former U.S. Secretary of Education Arne Duncan, and the late U.S. Secretary of State and General Colin Powell all spoke at various school events. In Springfield and Boston, Putnam and Madison Park Voc-Techs have also made significant strides in progress in urban school reform. They've accomplished this amidst municipal crises, state interventions into their school districts, and while also serving large numbers of at-risk and special needs students. Greater New Bedford Voc-Tech has long been a powerhouse. It gets most of its over 2,000 students from New Bedford, though it also serves Dartmouth and Fairhaven. It has about 700 students on its wait list. Here's one reason why. Greater New Bedford is rightly proud of its high-tech ambulance simulator. This allows an instructor to control a number of functions on a patient simulator, such as blood pressure and heartbeat, to give students real-time, realistic emergency medical technical training. Not surprisingly, New Bedford's Voc-Tech students love it, which is why it's beyond perplexing that state and local officials, including the mayor of New Bedford, whose school district has been chronically underperforming during his now 5 terms, would lead the charge to mess with the success of Voc-Tech schools. In medicine, doctors and nurses alike take the Hippocratic Oath. Its message is known to everyone. First, do no harm. Politicians and other critics of our Voc-Tech schools trying to tinker with the admissions policies and undermine successful school-based autonomies should remember this ancient wisdom when prescribing ill-considered policy remedies. Unmistakably, we at Pioneer like facts, data, and school models that deliver results for kids, especially underserved students. The Massachusetts Voc-Techs are a national model that have achieved proven hard-won successes. We believe they should be held up and celebrated for their achievements. This afternoon, we're honored to have a panel of accomplished Voc-Tech school leaders. With us, we have David Ferreira of MAVA and co-editor of Pioneer's book, Hands-On Achievement, Massachusetts National Model Voc-Tech Schools. Warley Williams, principal at Greater New Bedford Regional Vocational-Technical. Dr. Heidi Riccio, Superintendent Director of Essex North Shore Agricultural and Technical School and former Principal Director of Career and Technical Education at Medford Vocational-Technical High School. And Kevin McCaskill, former Executive Director of Madison Park Technical Vocational High School in Boston, Putnam Vocational High School in Springfield, and current Principal at Brockton High School. We're pleased to begin with the panel moderator, Dave Ferreira.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie, and a special shout out to the Pioneer Institute. The Pioneer Institute has been affiliated with the Voc-Tech community since 2007, and have enjoyed our relationship very much. And I'd like to particularly thank Jim Sturgis, the executive director, who gets no notoriety, and of course his board of directors for all of their support and all the activities we undertake. As we move forward with our panel today, I want to say a couple of things. First of all, you might wonder why I'm um, or know anything about urban education. The reality is, just a few years ago, I began my teaching career in Fall River, Massachusetts, at the regional voc-tech Diamond Regional. And I quickly found as a new physics teacher that there were different ways to teach in a voc-tech school to reach success. And from there, we saw tremendous gains as voc-tech moved forward, although has existed for 100 years. Demand in voc-tech schools are at an all-time high. No time in our history have they been more popular. Wait lists are common everywhere, from Harwich on Cape Cod all the way to the Berkshires at McCann Tech in North Adams. In addition, uh, we find that the wait lists in particular are generally centered in the state's gateway cities. These are 26 mid-sized communities in Massachusetts under definition, under statute definition, and we have had tremendous success. And ironically, all of the 26 communities have some form of vocational technical education. So our goal today is to work with our panel, who are the true experts, and we're going to begin working with our first question. And I welcome welcome Kevin McCaskill, who I've known for many years. And Kevin, welcome aboard. And I have the first question for you, Kevin. Let me give it to you. You have led voc-tech schools in Springfield and Boston. Could you talk about urban vocational technical education and school reform, the challenges and successes in those two very different cities?
Yes, first and foremost, good afternoon, everyone. And again, I'm honored and humbled to be a part of this distinguished panel. And to get right into the teeth of your question, I think the biggest thing is belief that this is an important approach to education. And looking at cities in Springfield and Boston, that was not always the case. I was very fortunate in Springfield to have two mayors, Charlie Ryan and Dom Sarno, who really committed themselves to making sure that we had a quality vocational school in Springfield. And that led to, again, support from the school committee as well as the city council. And that really stirred about a lot of interest, but most importantly, hands and feet and everything on the ground of support from local industry, especially a huge entity such as Bay State Health Systems, which was our biggest supporter going forward, as well as Smith and Wesson and others. And then we had to change perception. For years, Putnam was deemed a dumping ground. They had lost thousands of kids over the years. I mean, going back to 2004, the school had roughly a little bit over 900 students. Fast forward in the 6 years that we were there, enrollment ballooned to over 1,600, and it had a wait list of over 500 students, and was the school of choice in Springfield. And to this day, it still continues to be the school of choice. And it is really galvanizing a community that this approach was life-changing and life-saving, that having a marketable skill was the key to economic success and social success. And people really bought into it. It was a lot of grassroots cheerleading, attending a lot of community meetings in both, and same here in Boston. It was really trying to galvanize a community to show the importance of having a marketable skill to really level the playing field from an equity, diversity, and inclusion perspective. Boston was a little bit tougher, obviously with 36 options for high school, and Madison Park had its difficulties, but really gaining that support from the government was, and it's still a tough ordeal. And I think they're really trying to do some great things right now, but that was not always the case. Really getting that this is the jewel of the system. I understand about the the Latin academies, the Latin schools, and O'Brien, the exam schools. But this is a school that really fits into the economic barometer of the city. Across every sector, we have students that could participate in their industries. And that, again, and I keep harping on marketable skills. Boston is a much more expensive city than Springfield or any other city in the Commonwealth. And having these marketable skills can have you stay in your city of origin and getting a good line, getting a good, not only a quality education, but really gaining the skill to get gainful employment so you can stay and enjoy the city of Boston. So those are some of the things and some of the successes, and I'll wrap up right now. I mean, we just saw, obviously, in both schools, we saw enrollment increases. One of the things we're very proud about, because you think that all they learn is vocational and trades. Madison Park had the only students in the history of Boston Public Schools to obtain an associate's degree prior to getting their diploma. And that was due to the designation of being designated as an early college school, which no one thought would happen. And the students have just done wonders. And again, there's a lot I can talk about, but I don't want to hog up all the time from my colleagues. But again, it was just a joy to be a part of vocational education.
Thank you, Kevin. Very well said. And Mayor Wu, the current mayor, has made a very significant commitment to
Absolutely.
expanding Madison Park to possibly double its enrollment.
Absolutely.
In a brand new facility. And those of us that have been in voc-ed know that a new facility attracts a lot of students. So things are looking positive for Boston. Heidi, I guess it's your turn, having worked a long time in voc-tech ed. And you have the advantage of having worked in both a city vocational school and a regional voc-tech school that is also an agricultural high school. So you have quite a mixture of experience. So my question to you is, you've worked at Greater Lawrence, you've been the principal director at Medford Vocational-Technical School, and now superintendent at Essex North Shore Aggie. Would you discuss some of those experiences you have and those experiences and how that has helped you in the variety of schools you've worked with?
I think working at the 3 different types of schools have really given me the ability to see multiple different sides of vocational education. When I started at Greater Lawrence Tech as a culinary arts teacher, I had no thought of getting into administration. But thanks to colleagues and mentors, just like you, Dave, is that I just kind of worked my way up in Lawrence and at Greater Lawrence, and they had 4 communities that they served. And it was primarily, though, Lawrence. And over time, we actually were able to increase enrollment from our Methuen students, and then had low numbers from Andover and Lawrence. So that was an urban vocational school, even though we did have a couple towns that were included in it. When I moved to the city school of Medford Vocational School, that is where they had an entire wing called the V Wing, dedicated to all of the vocational programs. What happened there is that there was some sort of an exodus for Minuteman at that time. And so one of the charges that I had by the school committee was to increase programs in Medford, because at the time, they had very traditional programs. I call them traditional programs because they're primarily the building trades. And so with that, we were able to open up 11 programs within 2 years, which we're very proud of, but it kept kids in the city of Medford learning their vocational programming. Medford was also unique because it's a large union community. And so I learned a lot about politics and Boston. And so I was able to experience different mayors, not just in Medford, but in Boston, Somerville, et cetera. And so that gave me a unique opportunity to experience what those labor unions meant. And I'm not talking the teacher unions, I'm talking those building trade unions, and developing those relationships that then carried over into when I started at Essex North Shore. We serve 17 communities of our base communities, but then we also serve another 41 communities around 3 counties. So Middlesex, Suffolk, and Essex County, with agricultural programming. So even the budget process was very different here. But what allowed me to observe is to see the agricultural students working alongside our technical students. And a quick example of that is we have cows, and now's the time when they're going to start giving birth. And last school year, we had to isolate one of the cows because they were giving birth. The electrical kids are actually putting new LED lighting in the barn. And I walked in and the electrical kid said, "Dr. Riccio, she's due tomorrow. She's due tomorrow." And I stepped back and said, where would you get this where an electrical kid would ever experience the birth of a cow in high school? And that is the uniqueness, I think, of the agricultural schools, is that you can blend that ag ed into even the technical areas and weave them, so much so that we now have an agricultural requirement elective that the students have to take before they graduate. And that was as a result of a very casual conversation with an electrical student.
Amazing story, Heidi. Very well said. And that's one I hadn't heard before, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Let's give Wally Williams a shout out here. Yeah, Wally, you've been in Voc-Ed a very long time, but you also have been principal of the Whaling City Alternative School in the city of New Bedford, a principal of a middle school in New Bedford, and now principal of the Regional Voc-Tech, Greater New Bedford, of which you are a graduate. How do you think all these different roles in your career have helped to prepare you to lead GNBVT?
Well, it's a great question. Thank you, David. Pleasure to be on this panel with such titans of education, Kevin and Heidi. Great to be in your presence. So I think that, my start at Whaling City Alternative School, a junior and senior high school, was really the linchpin of community work with students who were unable to go to the comprehensive high school, New Bedford High School, because of felonies pending, violence at the high school, etc. It was my role as principal there, initially as history teacher, but as principal to support kids who were struggling the most in our city, whether it's households, foster family, they were coming with lots of baggage. And so it was a community effort in the building to work with our students, support them, and, parental involvement, being in the community, going door to door, doing home visits to get kids in school, shifting a culture that really wasn't conducive to safety and kids being comfortable in the school to one in which kids were very comfortable and safe and attendance increased. All of that really prepared me for the next steps of being an assistant principal and eventually a principal at both Keith Middle School and this school, Greater New Bedford Voc-Tech, because what I was able to do at Whaling City, working with the teachers, the administration, and members of different departments in the city, is scale. One of the things that I really like to hang my hat on is culture and climate. And so when I came to Greater New Bedford in 2014 as an assistant principal, I really feel like, I came to a thriving school. I came to my alma mater and it felt like such a blessing. But so what can I do at an already thriving school? I can really push the culture and climate of the school to the next level with pep rallies and making it a great and a fun place to be, a place where the community truly believes that it's a safe place for their kids. And so we did that. But there was this yearning along the way to be a principal again and have my, finger on the pulse of instructional leadership, which as an assistant principal, many may know, you don't really get to do much of that. So I had that yearning. And I knew I had to go to grow if I wanted to be a principal. So I took the job at Keith Middle School, one of the lowest performing middle schools in the state. I was a turnaround principal there at Keith Middle School, and I loved that experience. I spent 2 years there and did everything I could to try to convert the curricular chaos that was there. Take a team of teachers who I think were a bit demoralized because of the turnover in leadership to become a team of teachers that really cared about kids and focused on getting the curriculum and instruction where it needed to be. And I hang my hat on I think the great work that we did as a team at Keith Middle School. And so as being in the first percentile in our scores, at this point, the school is at the 6th percentile 5 years later because the systems are still in place. I do keep in contact with them. And so 6th percentile doesn't sound good, but when you're at the 1st percentile, trust me, that is good because the systems are in place. And so without those experiences as assistant principal and principal at Whaling City, doing that community work and being a turnaround principal at Keith Middle School, I don't think that I would have had sort of that holistic understanding of building operations, putting teams together, the communication to parents, staff, students, and coordinating. If I hadn't done all of that in the 3 previous experiences, I don't think I could be as effective as a principal here at Greater New Bedford Voc-Tech now. If one would believe I'm effective, I like to think I am. And it's just been a great ride, you know, being here at the school in my first year here 3 years ago, the contemplation of, you know, the admissions coming to a change. You know, we knew we had to make some adjustments to our academic programming to serve, you know, students that, you know, may increase based on demographics, and we've done that. And so I'm happy about that work.
And you're doing a great job, and your enthusiasm is contagious for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Moving on back to Kevin. Kevin, when you were at Putnam and Springfield, you initiated some reforms that subsequent leaders built upon and expanded, which propelled big turnarounds. Urban school reform is demanding. Would you talk about urban voc-tech reform and the dynamics of reforming a school embedded within a city school district?
Well, one of the things, we had a lot of helping hands, David. I mean, it really took, it was because one, we understood that one person does not make that difference. And we had a group of educators that really bought into that, where you didn't have to ask them to work extra hours. They wanted to, because of their love for the school first and foremost, but even greater, their love for these kids. So they knew they had to roll up their sleeves, and Springfield went through some heavy fiscal times in which we couldn't pay folks, but they did it anyway. But it was really an effort of really, how do we really enhance not only the curriculum on both sides of the house, but also our wraparound services, as well as our and extracurricular offerings. But really getting into the gist and the teeth of everything, it was really embracing the vocational frameworks. I think something that hadn't been done, and especially with Strand 3, embedded academics. And so we wanted to make sure that everyone across the board understood that and what embedded academics was, and our academic people brought into it. Our vocational folks really enhanced related theory, which was fantastic. And again, we really started getting some traction when we start seeing that symbiotic relationship really align itself on both sides of the house, with the addition of having Collins' writing approach, which was fit right within our instructional focus of literacy across all content areas. The Collins writing was the perfect remedy, as well from a mathematics perspective, utilizing the JFY net with Gary Kaplan and his organization, and really making sure that was a fixture across our school. And we saw the scores rise. We saw students comprehending more, but most importantly, they began to see the importance of their core content in the academic field within their vocational programming. We've totally improved our tier 2 and tier 3 support approaches. Saturday school was huge. Saturday, we ran a 22-week Saturday school. We didn't believe in boot camps for 2 or 3 weeks. Saturday school was 22 weeks. And we opened up all types of supports, from MCAS remediation to extra help to credit recovery. And we opened up, at least out of the 20 programs that we had, 12 of our programs were open. So kids could work on enhancing not only their work for their vocational programs, but really honing their skills for Skills USA, which was a great, great boon to us over at Putnam. We created community service projects that we were very proud of, and not just in Springfield. On 2 occasions, we sent contingencies down to New Orleans after Katrina. And it was just fantastic. And these are the types of things that get folks excited, you know, about the prospects of school. And David, we really wanted a moniker of, we're making this school again. This is what school is all about. So those are just a few things that we really, really wanted to put in place. And again, the number of hours was countless. And again, I cannot thank the folks over at Putnam enough for just their commitment, their dedication, and their just true love of that school, the students, the community, and the city at large. It was just fantastic. And I also got to add, and I said it in my previous response, the partnerships were just tremendous between, again, such as Smith & Wesson, Bay State Health Systems, as well as the Regional Employment Board, headed by Dave Cruz out there. They were just simply tremendous.
Well said, Kevin. And I often say to people that we no longer have academic teachers and vocational teachers. Everyone is a vocational technical academic teacher. And that makes a difference because kids begin to understand, I think, the connection between that academic theory and how it is applicable to what they're learning in their field. And that's a key component of strong voc-ed programs and very helpful in any setting, be it a rural setting or an urban setting. Heidi, well, back to you. The Mass Vocational Technical Schools have built a remarkably successful educational culture that some refer to as student-centric, which has led to huge gains on MCAS and while maintaining the same standards for occupational excellence. Could you talk about the unique voc-tech culture that has driven student achievement gains and how these efforts have helped, in particular, urban students?
Sure. When I worked at Greater Lawrence, I started in '97. So the MCAS had not yet started, but the frameworks and the standards for Massachusetts State Academic did start. So I was fortunate to be involved in the first pilot program of integration with the State Department of Education. And when MCAS first started, it was daunting for our students, particularly our students that were immigrants or newcomers. And we had kids just running out of the classroom and just shutting down. And so after that, it was how do we prepare those students for those high stake testing? Because I think, as Kevin had said, people didn't think that our kids could do it. They didn't think that our kids could rise to the occasion. And I think what's unique about vocational education is that half of our teachers have actually worked in industry. And because of that, I think there's a bit of tenacity. If you were a plumber, how did you start? You started as an apprentice, then you got your journeyman, then your master's. And I think that tenacity in the vocational setting can then be transferred onto our students. And then over time, we were, I don't know if people remember the EQA and the PQA, when the state came in, and Greater Lawrence at one time was in that. And we were very proud at our rating over the next 6 years of being able to get off of that status. That was not without a lot of work and embedding that academic component into the technical side, but vice versa. It was equally important to embed the vocational side of the house into the academic framework. For example, in math class, if they're learning about Ohm's law, the math teacher would say, hey, who's an electrical? And they throw the electrical kid up at the board and they're teaching the other kids from other programs that Ohm's law. And I think it was really the connectivity of both the academic and the vocational side of the house. And John Dewey says we learn by doing. And so with that, we do learn by doing. And so while the other comprehensive schools were eliminating vocational programs, we were adding vocational programs. So over that time from 1997 right up until now, we have several more programs that we didn't have previously. And that's basically looking at that economy scale and what is the industry in your area. So we rose to the occasion. I think, again, I think we surprise ourselves and I think we surprise others, and we continue to do so. I think the MCAS is obviously just one indicator of success, but our students, when they learn, the light bulb goes off, typically in the shop setting, because now they get the math, they get the science of that particular content area. And I'm excited. I'm excited for our kids when they graduate, and we have one of the highest growth rates of all of our sending communities. We don't always share that with our sending communities because sometimes, they may not be too happy about that, but that's because we're data centered too. You have to look at the data and you have to figure out where the kids' weaknesses are. And just one more thing about regional vocational schools is our kids at Essex Tech are coming from 150 different middle schools. So they're not coming from one community with the same set of curriculum standards, the same set of curriculum lesson plans. And because of that, I also think some of the regional schools do a really great job of bringing all of those different schools, those middle schools, the private schools, the charter schools together, and get them to do well on that MCAS. And I just think it's a very unique setting that we have. And I'm proud that our kids can have 90 days of academics and still do very well on a state standardized assessment.
And that's so true. One thing you also said that I think is equally important, the skill set of the vocational instructors who have been out in the field and climbed the ladder make tremendous role models. We have small learning communities in each of our vocational programs by design and by scheduling. And I think that rubs off on students because you don't learn work skills by watching somebody else do it. You learn it, and they provide the role model for that kind of instruction. Really exciting stuff.
We also just, the tenacity is that piece, right? Is that when we allow kids to fail so that they can then succeed. And I think that's not always the case in an academic setting, is that when they fail the class, they fail the class. But in the vocational side of the house, you never fail. You just get back up and do it again.
Correct. Very well said. Very well said. Wally, as a graduate of Greater New Bedford Voc-Tech, would you discuss the vital sense of community that Voc-Techs have developed over decades and how it can help guide young people toward work and additional schooling to succeed in life?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was a blessing to have been a student here at Greater New Bedford Voc-Tech. I can remember being a middle schooler who was definitely wayward. I didn't, wasn't well behaved, but I know by 7th grade, I knew that if I wanted to go to that school, I had to work really hard, and so I did. And I was blessed to be a student here at Greater New Bedford Voc-Tech. And so what I found out right away and what I see over the years is that in the vocational shops, there's this community that just comes about almost on the first day that you get, your permanent shop as a freshman. And it starts to grow into a family environment. Sometimes it's rocky, sometimes it's just like a family, and so you develop these strong relationships with your teachers, with your peers across 6 hours a day, depending on how many days that 90 days a year. It really creates a family environment. And then coupled with your junior and senior year, where you go off to placement, you go off to co-op, possibly connecting with, industry, who usually have been connected through the shop teacher and people working out in the industry. There's just this cyclical system where student is getting access to this technician, in the building, and then a technician outside of the building. So that way the world is just wide open to them in their industry, that they're getting all these skill sets in the school. And I can speak as a student, that was exactly the case for me. And interestingly enough, one of the things that makes, I can speak for New Bedford Voc-Tech, such a community is that so many of the teachers and the support staff that work here were students here. They're alumni, just like me. And so we have institutional knowledge, we have history, we have memories, and that is something that resonates with us, so it resonates with the kids, and they see that passion, they see that emphasis on mission that a lot of us alumni have in this building. And so it really helps exude the passion that students need to look at the big picture, which kids don't always see. And it also, it always gives me the hope that I know I have great teachers that are committed to getting our kids to the next level. And the fact that we have great teachers that keep strong connections with industry out in the community, so that way they can be that through line for our students. I was just talking to a teacher down in STEAM engineering. We have 2 kids out. They graduated 5 years ago, 2 wonderful kids, both making $130,000 a piece. And that's just 2 of so many stories just like that. So that you just get so much solace and just so much gratitude knowing that that's the impact that we have as educators, especially if we came through these doors as students.
Well said, Wally. Well, we've gotten to the third round of questions. We're going to shake it up a little bit here, in that instead of asking each of you a different question, we're going to present one question and ask each of you to respond to the very same question. So let's see how that goes. And we're going to start with Kevin. You're lucky you don't have to worry about who said what when.
I might, you never know.
Yeah, that's true. Despite Massachusetts voc-techs now being a national model, they increasingly seem under fire from critics, with federal civil rights complaints and state-level efforts to undermine their proven successes. Would you talk about the recent policy changes that have taken place and some of the politics around the admissions debate?
You know, a lot of it, you know, is based on I mean, David, you've been around for a while, as most of us have, with the exception of Warley. He's the youngster in the group, but he's I tell you, he's fantastic.
Catches on
But
fast.
you know that we are just creaming the top students off, and one of the things that we really want to do is really get students who really want this approach to education. Industry is asking for this. Industry wants motivated, skilled individuals coming into these fields, and we're the individuals that can do that. We're the schools that can do that. And so when we're talking about lottery and we're talking about admissions policies and the such, well, someone still is not going to get into these schools. I mean, the bottom line. So you can change it as much as you can, but someone is not getting in. The key is more money, more seats. Build additional schools. Now I know some of the sending districts may be losing money out of the deal, but nothing. You know, from a personal perspective, there's nothing wrong with healthy competition because we have a proven model that works. And if we're talking about the economy of scale with industry here in Massachusetts, especially a Commonwealth losing its population, how do we keep these folks work? How do we keep the industries going? How do we keep the economy going? By having students graduating with marketable skills across a number of industry sectors. And if that means opening up new schools, enhancing current buildings, so that's a call to the MSBA. So again, let's get them on a hook for some more money, but also just creating that dynamic of more seats. Because one of the things you hear about, and again, it's a bit controversial, we talk about with equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, when you look at some of the sending districts in some of our regional schools, well, one, the sending districts don't have students of color. They just don't. And they're going to have low multi-language learners from the percentage perspective. They're going to have low numbers of special education students. So that really turns to our greater Lowells, our greater New Bedfords, our greater Lawrences, the Madison Parks, the Putnams, and the Worcester Techs. We're going to have more of those students. So again, if this is a demand, why aren't we increasing the amount of offerings in more schools? Who's to say that Worcester does not open an additional vocational school with a different focus and not the same programs at Worcester Tech? So again, allowing more access and more opportunities for students to make more informed choices, to get into these career pathways. And so the dynamic always comes down to money, because we can keep screaming about a lottery, and a lottery may be, again, not a child's choice, because maybe the child doesn't want to go to a vocational school. And the next thing you know, they're sitting there for 4 years and they haven't and they've just pretty much wasted their time because, again, they don't want to get into a trade area or a technology, whatever it may be. So Dave, I shake my head sometimes. I just shake my head and wonder, where are we going with this? But industry has to really, I think, take up this charge and say, look, we want we obviously want a more diverse field of workers coming in, but we need more skilled workers. One of the things that we have to improve upon, here in the Commonwealth, in the vocational system, of students staying in the field. And, you know, as you know, it's no big secret. Sometimes we have kids who graduate from high school and never see this field again. And that's a problem. And so again, how do we work that out? I mean, there's some smart folks there like Worley and Heidi and everyone else, in, you know, in our MAVA fraternity and sorority. We got the answers, and I said, just let these people work and they'll figure it out.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. And part of that is I think we need to start career education at an earlier age. I'm talking, you know, early age.
Middle school, at middle school would work.
Middle school would be great. I'm old enough to remember when we had industrial arts in middle school, and you'd have print shop and home economics and those kinds of programs, not to learn proficiency, but to learn what work was about in general, and then also specifically in certain occupational paths. So
exposure, David, was all about exposure.
Sure. Thank you very much. Perfect word for it. Heidi, I guess I don't know if we took all of the wind out of your sails. No, I didn't think so. Same question for you, Heidi.
I think we're all kind of grappling with this because it's frustrating when we say that we're not equitable, when we all look at data very carefully and making sure that the right kid is every kid. And it bothers me when people in the community who have never stepped foot in a vocational school to see what we are doing and the unique education format by which we teach our students, they are so quick to judge that we're not equitable and that we're violating somebody's civil rights. When in actuality, when you see what our kids are doing, it's pretty amazing. And it equally bothers me when they talk about how vocational kids go on to college. And in my brain, I'm thinking, okay, are you saying then that our kids of color shouldn't be going to college and that they should be going just into a trade? And what is unique about vocational education is that we are interest-based learning. And so Jal Mata, who has a great book out there, In Search of Deeper Learning, states exactly that. Kids, when they're interested in something, they will thrive. And that's what's great about vocational education, because our kids get to choose where their interests lie. And we've done a better part of the equitable access piece for us, because much like Kevin, we have 2 gateway cities in our district, Peabody and Salem. We also have 2 additional cities, Beverly and Gloucester. But then we have 13 high socioeconomic communities. And so I always use that as an example. 300 Peabody 8th graders applied to Essex Tech for next year, 300 of their 8th graders. We had 7 kids from Nahant. If we put just those 307 kids in, statistically, how many kids from Nahant would get in? Now, Nahant is paying the debt for this beautiful building and campus that we have. They're required by regulations to pay for at least 5 students. And so if that kid doesn't have a chance to get in because of that lottery, that is very concerning for me. I also believe that we can move the needle when we look at it from an equitable lens. We did. We looked at it and said our kids of color were very low. And why was that? Well, why were they choosing to stay in Salem or Peabody or any other community? And we dug deep into that data. And some of it was because they had to take care of their siblings. Danvers, where we are not on public transportation. So although we offer bus services, it was hard for our kids to go to a football game on a Friday night if they didn't have a ride home back to their community of Lynn. And so what we did is we were able to move the needle without any lottery, without anybody telling us to, because we knew it was the right thing to do, because we wanted a more diverse student body, from 3% to almost 20% in 5 years. And that was done through a concerted effort of getting out there, making sure that kids knew who we were, we had an immigrant, my first year here, we had a newcomer parent come in and begged us to take his son. He had just come to the country and he was from Brazil. He spoke Portuguese. So we got one of our Portuguese speaking maintenance workers, and he said he just wants his son here. He didn't know the application process. He didn't know that we existed because he lived in a city. So we needed to make sure that those newcomers had a way to find out who we were. And so we hired a Spanish-speaking parent liaison, who I'm very proud to say, she was one of my Greater Lawrence culinary arts students back in the early 2000s. And we hired her to be able to go out into the community. We also hired a Portuguese speaking, and they talked with the parents in their native language. They also filled out the application in their language of choice. They did the interviews in their language of choice. And as a result, we have also bumped up our ML population, but we have a unique partnership with Salem for next year, where we are going to be accepting 20 ML students, newcomer students, aside from the regular application process. So any kid, any newcomer that gets in through the regular process, great. But on top of that, we're going to add 20 more students that are newcomers. And we did that because we do see that there's a need for newcomers to experience what we do here at Essex Tech. But I will say that Peabody, Salem, Gloucester all have Chapter 74 programming. Dr. Reich said just last week in a meeting that 600 of his 900 students are taking advantage of Chapter 74 program, which is awesome. But many of those kids are sitting on our wait list, and that doesn't get taken off. So regardless of that wait list, I don't know that that wait list is exactly as large as it is. Any ag kid that is on our wait list could be at Greater Lawrence. My cousin was a perfect example, waitlisted at Essex Tech. So now you know I don't prefer people because it was a cousin. Do you know, how did you like that phone call? And they were twins. One twin got in, one twin got waitlisted. The twin that got in, senior in vet science. The other twin, senior in graphic design at Greater Lawrence. Now, he is still sitting on our waitlist data from 4 years ago. Right. So it's really important to get with the data, understand, and find ways to make sure that as many kids can get in. We added 500 seats to our school over the last 6 years.
And you continue to make more space across the street with the projects and using your students to build additional vocational programs. So keep up the great work you're doing there. Well, Wally, you're stuck now. You're the only one left to respond to the question. So bring it on.
I don't know what else to say. They did a great job. I mean, you know, there were some really great things that were said that I can certainly, you know, piggyback on. You know, expanded access is vital. I think that's the solution. There's a lot of talk about lottery, and it seems like that is the peg that folks are feeling like is the answer. And I don't know if that's really the answer to the question. I mean, when we look at the data over the year, the 2 years that we have had a qualified lottery, we haven't had more kids in the subgroups we're looking for in the lottery compared to our selective process. So that hasn't garnered more kids who are on IEPs or speak other languages. That doesn't, at this point, it's not proving that it works. And again, over time, maybe we'll see that, but it's the proof is not in the pudding there. You know, adding more seats, enlarging our schools, adding more schools, that's the answer. You know, so expanded access, I think, makes the most sense. We have 585 seats, 585 freshman seats for over 1,000 applicants. It's closer to 1,200 to 1,300 kids in the city of New Bedford who yearn to be in this building. So it breaks my heart. You know, I get the calls like a lot of us vocational principals do from the families who really want to get their kids in here. So it's a very hard time of year. And then this time of year is tough because the kids who want to get their, you know, their final placement in the shops they choose. So, but there's another point that I heard Kevin say, healthy competition. I think healthy competition is key among the comprehensive school and the vocational. So I think back in 2002 or 2003, when MCAS came on the scene, New Bedford Voc-Tech certainly, and I think most vocationals in the school took on that challenge of enhancing the academic programming in the vocational schools. And so by that, students were able to leave here with the ability to go off to the college or university of their choice or the career of their choice. Essentially, all it really did was open up more doors for our kids, which I think is an awesome thing. And we add value to kids, and we've maintained the high expectations around discipline, safety, and high expectations that some comprehensives have not. And so I think that one of the things that have happened, at least in New Bedford, is that families are choosing New Bedford Voc-Tech because they want their kids to have a trade, but just as much because they want their kids to go to a safe setting. And so we have maintained our expectations. You know, we despite some of the laws that say, you know, you have to go lighter on discipline, et cetera, we follow the law, but we certainly hold kids to the T, to the measure, and to the line, and maintain those high expectations for kids, whereas some other schools will not, thereby creating institutions where parents don't want to send their kids. So I think when you talk about healthy competition, we need to look at vocational programming and access. We need to look at academic programming, but also are schools safe? You know, that hasn't come up yet, and that is the elephant in the room, because I talk to parents every single day. I go to Market Basket, which is every Sunday when I go to buy my groceries, I see families, and that's what's on their minds. You know, so to the politicians, the decision makers, and to us, we can't forget about how families feel about these schools. We have maintained those high expectations and been bastions of safety, as well as places where kids can go off and make $130,000 a year, as I said earlier. So I can say a lot more, but I wanted to just at least contribute that much.
I appreciate that, Wally, and so true about standards and raising the bar. When the Ed Reform Act first started, it was about raising the bar. They were talking primarily about the academic standard, but discipline is equally important to attaining that higher academic standard or vocational standard, and certainly something that needs to be accomplished by a graduate of a high school. It's all those things are equally important. So we got time for a couple more. Are you ready? He is. Kevin, over the last 25 to 30 years, you're too young to answer this question, aren't you?
Yeah, David.
The Voc-Tech schools are the group of pre-existing schools that used the 1993 Massachusetts Education Reform Act accountability measures, the school reviews, school choice, et cetera, better than any group in the state. Could you talk about how the Voc-Techs used Ed Reform to benefit urban students?
Well, for instance, it really helped us better align what we were offering in our schools from an academic perspective. I think I mentioned the alignment of strand 3 of the frameworks. That was huge, of looking at what we were doing across content areas and aligning them to the standards of the MCAS test, where we weren't going to teach to the test, we were teaching to a standard. And teachers and department chairs just did a phenomenal job of aligning standards of MCAS, standards of the core content areas, as well as the standards of the vocational frameworks, and aligning those two and coming up with exemplars, coming up with assessments. It was crucial. So we never taught to a test. Kids were just learning a standard, which, and again, understanding those standards and repetition, of course, works. I think I mentioned having related theory, being a part of that, which was huge. And that wasn't just done at Putnam. That was done across the board. And people were committed to it. You know, contrary to popular belief, us Vokies know about numbers, where we understand how they operate and what we need to do to improve. And so it was a concentrated effort. And again, I can only talk for what was done at Putnam and as well as Madison Park later on. But it was really understanding how do we make alignment to standards across the board. And, you know, Worley touched upon it, expectations. Regardless of our demographic, regardless if we had high special education numbers, regardless if the EL numbers were high, we were going to hold ourselves to that standard and not use an excuse of why we didn't hit it. And so the expectation stayed for all students across the board. And I think really having that high level of expectations of our students and our staff, not making excuses about why we weren't hitting marks and that we were going to maintain it and not modify it at all. I think it really lent itself to the success that we had both at Putnam as well as Madison Park.
Very well said, Kevin, and I appreciate your comments. We don't have a lot of time, so if it's okay with the three of you, I'm going to jump to the final question where, again, this is the same question for everybody. If you look at, I'll read it to you. It says, finally, if you were Commissioner of Education, heaven forbid anybody would want that responsibility, or maybe worse yet, Secretary of Education. But if you were, and you were asked to enact 3 policies to strengthen urban voc-tech schools in Massachusetts, what would the 3 policies be? Obviously, no right answer on this one or wrong answer. It's just an opinion. If you only have one policy, we'd love to hear it. Start with you, Kevin, all right?
You know, I think now that I'm at Brockton, I gotta say we gotta add that piece in. I think one of the mandates that I would really put in that to make career development a mandate for all schools.
Oh, I think that's a wonderful idea. And that career development start earlier than
in middle school, starting in our middle schools.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Heidi, would you like to take a shot on a policy you would like to see that would strengthen?
I don't know if the commissioner could actually do this, but I would.
My dream, do anything on our webinar.
My dream is that every undocumented or immigrant student that has a visitor's visa can actually go to work when they are able to go out on cooperative education, and then particularly when they learn that trade, because currently our current system is working against our immigrant population. And if that's not a civil rights problem, I don't know what is.
That is the perfect response, Heidi, and so very true. And most people don't realize that unless they're in voc-tech education. Wally, do you have one to add?
Yeah, so I first want to endorse both of those policies. Those are absolutely great policies necessary for education. When you asked for 3, I thought of like 6 right away. I'm gonna say, obviously, on behalf of probably every vocational institution, expanded seating, especially in the places that have a waiting list, right? But one of the things, you know, I really think it's important for kids and for schools to have high expectations for kids, especially in a vocational setting. We talked about this earlier, and so the one of the policies that came out last year, November 8th, you know, with suspensions, I think we're going down the path of going very, very light on discipline. And I think generally the country is going in that direction. And I don't know that it's good for this generation or for our society. And so I think one of the things that becomes what makes our institution safe is that we can hold high expectations. You know, we have incentives for kids. And so I would just say that I would want the strict prohibition on some of the discipline over the years that have come down the pike for some of those to be kind of rolled back, I would say. I'm not saying that I would want to expel every kid. I can say for the first time, I haven't expelled a kid at this point in the year, and that's pretty amazing. And I'm happy about that. And we don't work to do that, but I think we have to be able to keep our buildings safe. And so that's something that means a lot to me. And I think we need to get a little bit more thoughtful about bilingual education. I think sheltered English immersion is okay of a strategy, but I think for kids who don't speak English to be in an English only class to try to learn content, I don't know if that's the answer. So I do think a committee on policy around that to rethink it is definitely something necessary to talk about.
Well, listening to the 3 of you and those great responses, I'd be happy to offer a letter for recommendation if you decide to become Secretary of Education or Commissioner of Education. Jamie, is it time that you'd like to take over?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, David. So first of all, I want to thank you and the panelists. What a terrific conversation. I mean, a real pleasure. I've done a couple dozen of these webinars, and I got to tell you, this is one of the strongest panel discussions I've seen. So I'm really grateful for everyone's time, especially because folks are running schools, and that is very demanding work day in, day out. And really grateful for people taking their time out of their busy schedule to share their views on a lot of important policies that are so vital, and as well as to our audience too. So I'm going to show you, we're really proud of the book that David and Krista Nicola produced for us a couple of years ago, which I'm going to recommend. It's on Pioneer's website. But I also want to note Dr. Wilfred Savoy, who is both a real mentor for me on this topic. I learned an enormous amount from him, but he has a new book out, The History of Vocational Education in Massachusetts, a Model for the Nation. Here it is. It's available on Fred's website, which is Savoy Consulting, and I would strongly recommend it. I've read chapters of it. I've read portions of it. He is a superb educator, a lot of insights, a lot of messages about what it is that Massachusetts needs to remember about why we've got such great voc-tech schools, but it's a lot of lessons for other states that are trying to emulate what we're doing. So again, grateful for everyone's time. This will be available on YouTube, but appreciate everyone's comments and leadership on this topic. Thank you.